I, Kycell Bakshi, begin this 29th chapter of the Forgotten Minotaur King as the hostage of the Andronian knight, Artois Valois. The mayor of Goldinerad, kind Leman, the Minotaur, and I stared at the regal knight before us in pure bemusement. Artois Valois, a lieutenant of the Morongo Knights out of Andron. He and his order had initiated their assault on the kingdom in retaliation for the incarceration of their diplomat Oxor Chungus, while Kind and I were stuck in the abandoned wing of the university's practice medical ward. Due to Kind's severe injuries, we were completely at Valois's mercy. Kind tried to shift forward on his cot, despite him already splitting a number of the stitches in his chest, and having to fight against his arms, which were both encased in casts. Grinning mercilessly at the sharp armored knight through his complicated jaw wiring, Kind still managed to offer a threat, as well as advice that sent a chill down my spine.
Listen here, fancy boy. I'm the mayor of this town, and I don't want you picking a fight with those bastards.
Valois gestured for silence to the hulking Minotaur, and with his other hand hoisted his severe-looking spear into the stone flooring of the room, then ran his armored glove through his lengthy hair and offered Kind a cocky smirk in return.
Well, Monsieur Mayor, I have no intention of bowing to these Alazondian cat bastards as you may have. I wouldn't surrender a city, even one as irrelevant as this one, for all the gold in the world. I plan on fighting and keeping what is mine.
Kind's eyes became bloodshot with rage, to a level I hadn't seen since Fugazi, the assassin, had laid eyes on the mayor's son. He lunged from the bed and splintered his right arm's cast, revealing the battered and still weeping contents. But Artois Valois was even quicker. Before Kind could close the distance, he had his spear back in hand and the tip just nipping the skin of Kind's throat. Kind stopped in place, and Valois continued to offer nothing more than a wide smirk and a raised eyebrow. I quickly made to step in, offering apologies and clarification for Kind to Valois that the Rijalisad were no friends of ours. They were the ones that had hospitalized Kind, and they took his son. At this information, Valois relaxed, his playfully rude demeanor, lowering his spear, no longer seeing Kind as a threat. I then told the knight that Kind would love nothing more than to help him and his knights.
And how exactly do I know I can trust you?
As Kind eased himself back into his cot, I began to explain all that Kind had lost to these people, from his father and his people in the past, to his son and kingdom more recently. I told Valois how he's fought and killed them in the past, even with the aid of the kingdom's former ruler, Crunturg. Valois pulled up the seat Myrick had occupied when she and the nurse Estelise had attended us. He sat and crossed his legs in a very relaxed position. Tell me about the Rijalisad. You say you and this old king killed some? Willadine and Clarabelle Mindis stood before the kneeling Minotaur Crunturg, the beast that had slain their father, as little fondness as they had for the man, and pleaded for his help. Crunturg checked his wounds from the massive tiger he had just battled with in the Mindus crypts. Nothing too serious. At least nothing serious enough to hinder his still encroaching fight with who knows how many Rijalisad forces. He then turned his gaze to the now solid gold statue of said tiger, posed in the pinning position it had grappled Crunturg in moments ago. With kind mourning his father and seeing to the safety of Goldenerod's future, these two human girls, with the power to turn any living thing permanently into gold, would be a boon. He hesitated for a moment. Putting these adolescent and pampered girls in harm's way was not his ideal choice, but they seemed more than anxious to help, and there was the fact the Rijalisad had chained them in their family tomb to a pair of large carnivorous cats, so they likely wanted vengeance as well. He wordlessly nodded for them to follow him.
Well, come on, sis. We ain't got no choice,
offered Willadine. As they made their way from the tomb, a gaggle of human men, also carrying the same curved swords as the one Crunturg had dispatched while carrying a dead Minotaur, they halted at their arrival. Arming themselves as Crunturg did the same, the girls held back, either due to fear or unwillingness to harm fellow human citizens. Of the four burly men, the tallest and bravest was first to come and make a move at Crunturg. His bravery was met with the head of the cord-blessed craghammer splitting him in half, sending his torso and waist spinning in opposite directions. Clarabelle Mindus, the younger, yelled in horror. The second and third man attempted a double maneuver, one going for Crunturg's right, the other his left, both within Crunturg's considerable wingspan, as he clotheslined both men, then proceeded to lift them into the air and smash both of their heads together. Left once again, with one man standing for the explicit purpose of questioning, Crunturg ordered the man not to move. The sole human remaining's response was to soil himself in fear. Crunturg gestured for the Mindus girls to freeze his legs in gold, just in case the information was faulty, such as the last man's. Gingerly approaching, as not to touch the man's mess, Willadine complied. Ledenifer Rijalisad was deep inside the bowels of the Mindus castle. In attendance was his humble servant, a lesser orange tiger-furred Rakshasa, unlucky enough to be reincarnated in the lower castes. The hulking servant radiated intimidation to all that gazed upon him, but that paled to the regal fear instilled to those lesser beings that looked upon the lion-like mane and beauty of Ledenifer. His royal armor and robes could reduce any peasant to tears. They strode together through the crypts beneath the castle's western abbey, rows and rows of empty cells. They had just left a bookroom Ledenifer made mental plans to have restored by one of their vassals from overseas when he got the chance. Then suddenly a blasting sound ranged out through the dungeon. The heavy and angry stampeding hooves that followed meant one thing. The humble servant turned to the now destroyed gates to the castle and could see a braying and snarling beast storming towards his liege, brandishing a violent and oversized-looking hammer. Putting a protective claw around Ledenifer, he faced his king to ascertain what to do, but the king remained unworried.
Yes, my friend, you have permission to get rid of this nuisance.
Ledenifer turned his back to the incoming brawl and continued to pace the dungeon walls. while the humble servant shot off like a bullet, meeting Crunturg before he was even halfway to the Rijalisad Royal. Crunturg hefted the hammer to his chest just in time to intercept a deadly flash kick from this Rakshasa he recognized as the butler that had delivered Rijalisad to him just a few days ago. Was she still here too? As the servant did a number of backflips away from Crunturg and struck a martial arts pose in preparation for a fight, Crunturg casually swung his hammer as if he was readying a game of stickball. When the servant launched himself again, Crunturg swung for his head in a wide and telegraphed swing. As the Rakshasa ducked, which Crunturg had predicted, he launched a hoof into the tiger's chest, stunning him for at least a few seconds, more than enough time for Crunturg to whistle loudly and cause two adolescent human girls to clutch the servant by the right arm and right leg. Ignoring the weak grasps these two interlopers had, the servant balled up his fist and sent one girl careening into the cell doors with a loud crack and a bloody face. The other he grabbed from her dress robes and tossed into her twin. Leaving these girls he was certain should have been being guarded by tigers for later, he attempted to stand, only to realize he couldn't move his right side. Looking down, he saw that his entire right arm and leg were stiff and unmoving golden statues. He struggled to get up on his good leg, but only looked up to see Crunturg, once again swinging his hammer like a bat, and this time swinging far more precisely, shattering his arm and leg. Lijalisad finally turned towards the fight at the sound of shattering and screaming. Curious what his servant had done to cause such peculiar results, when he saw the lower Rakshasa in a broken heap and pool of blood, he blanched.
How dare you harm a noble member of the Rakshasa people, wretch! I don't know how you ran from my brother Rijalisad, but you're dead, cow.
Crunturg turned from the wannabe king to see if the Mindus girls were all right. This danger was the exact reason he didn't want to bring them, but their aid in his easy defeat of two powerful foes was why he had. When he saw Willadine helping Clarabelle to her feet, he turned from them and back to the Rijalisad prince. Pointing his hammer, Crunturg told him he didn't run from Rijalisad. He had killed him and the Man-Reaper. Now this butler and Lijalisad was next.
How dare you!
Producing a giant curved scimitar, the one given to the human collaborators looked like toothpicks in comparison. He ran to Crunturg and began swinging wildly. Crunturg parried every incoming blow, but was surprised at the strength and speed of the prince. He was in a different league from the servant and even Rijalisad. Every stab and scrape was causing considerable damage to the craghammer, sturdy as it was. They locked weapons again and again, neither giving ground to the other. Not wanting to resort to it, but seeing little other option, he called to the girls to get ready. But as he did, they locked eyes with Lijalisad.
Do you promise to give us back old Dinarad?
Yelled Clarabelle, still in her older sister's grasp, and stifling her gushing broken nose. Crunturg couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lijalisad broke their stalemate this time, and let out a gleeful shriek as he looked past the two twins.
Your kingdom for your aid.
launching herself from her sister, causing Willadine to sprawl on the ground. Clarabelle lunged at Crunturg, grappling him around the waist, disrupting his balance just enough and allowing Ledenifer to deliver a stab so deep Crunturg was certain internal organs were pierced. On reflex, he kicked the girl away from him, just as his lower half began to gleam. However, the torrent of blood that had been rushing from her nose and mouth smeared along Crunturg as she let go, reverting the cruciopedic powers of the Mindus touch just as fast as they spread. Willadine shrieked for her sister, as for the second time in moments the girl was flung into a crypt wall, but her shriek of worry turned into one of pain as her back erupted in a torrent of blood. The one-armed and one-legged servant had gouged the young woman all the way down her back and tossed her aside as he now limped himself along the ground towards Crunturg, trying not to lose footing to Ledenifer as his blood pooled beneath his hooves. He simultaneously tried to keep attention on the crawling threat to his back. Just as he began to close the distance from the ground, Clarabelle once again leaped, this time on to the Rakshasa servant, releasing a blood-curdling scream as she straddled his back and grabbed both sides of his tiger-like head. Within moments, it was encased in gold, and moments after that, she repeatedly smashed it into the cold stone ground, her own coagulating blood causing the nuggets and chunks that sprayed from the tiger man's cranium to pool in what almost looked like a molten gold soup. Once again enraged, Ledenifer lost sight of his fight. Crunturg locked his hammer to the scimitar once more, but then launched both weapons into the air with a powerful bellow. The Rijalisad prince stumbled back from the fight, stunned and confused. For Crunturg, this was just enough room to get into a crouched position and ram the Rakshasa with both of his horns. His right pierced the prince through the armor and pulping the heart beneath. Falling to his knees, slightly woozy from blood loss and the length of the fight, Crunturg lost track of how long he finally rested. Crunturg sat there in the dungeon in a pool of his own and his enemy's blood when a familiar voice filled with worry addressed him. He turned to see a bewildered kind holding his wounds shut. When the squire asked what happened, Crunturg turned to see a golden slurry of the headless servant, but neither sister's remains. Then he turned forward and saw he had beaten Ledenifer halfway through the dungeon wall with his headbutt. Chuckling to himself, but having difficulty standing, he put a hand on Kind and told his squire, 3 down. Now it was time to take this fight to the Rijalisad's turf. Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kycell Bakshi, along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.